The biggest mistake about the Antichrist is imagining that he will appear out of nowhere. The Bible says something different. Before appearing as an individual, he manifests as a pattern, a mindset, a way of seeing reality. And the most disturbing thing is that many of these patterns are already operating in the world. Today we will decode the 7 signs that reveal this invisible influence, because the invisible always comes before the visible. Code 1. The relativization of truth. 2nd, Thessalonians chapter 2, verses 10 and 11. Every form of deception depends on a prior condition, the relativization of truth. The pattern here is subtle. Truth does not need to be denied in order to lose its power. It only needs to be turned into an opinion. When each individual becomes their own reference point, truth ceases to be something to be discovered and becomes something to be chosen. What is true loses importance, and what is convenient gains ground. Application. Notice how many decisions are guided not by reality, but by personal preference. The problem does not begin when a lie is accepted. It begins when truth starts being treated as just another opinion. Because when truth becomes relative, deception finds the perfect environment to thrive. Code 2. The exaltation of the self. 2 Timothy chapter 3, verses 1 and 2. The pattern here is centralization. It is not corruption. It is not persecution. It is something far more subtle. Lovers of themselves. Everything begins to revolve around the individual. Desires, opinions, needs. When the self occupies the center, any external authority begins to be seen as a threat, including God. Application. A culture obsessed with self-image inevitably becomes resistant to correction, and those who do not accept correction lose the ability to grow. Code 3. The rejection of authority. Psalms chapter 2, verses 2 and 3. Every Antichrist system shares a common characteristic. It does not seek freedom alone. It seeks absolute autonomy. The human mind tends to interpret any form of authority as a restriction, but the Bible presents a different principle. Boundaries do not exist to imprison. They exist to protect. Application. Whenever a culture begins to treat all authority as oppression, it begins a process of self-destruction, because removing boundaries does not create freedom. It creates vulnerability. Code 4. The seduction of power. Revelation chapter 13, verse 2. The Antichrist does not conquer first through force. He conquers through admiration. People rarely surrender their power because they are forced to. They surrender it because they believe they will receive something in return. In the face of uncertainty, the human mind seeks someone who appears to be in control. Someone who offers simple solutions to complex problems. The danger is that the promised security often turns into dependency. Application. Whenever someone offers easy answers to profound questions, discernment should increase, because great systems of manipulation do not thrive solely because of their leader's ambition. They thrive when people prefer the security of obedience over the weight of responsibility. Code 5. The normalization of lies. Isaiah chapter 5, verse 20. The most effective deception does not immediately turn evil into good. It alters definitions. No society changes its values overnight. First, the words change, then the meanings. Finally, the perception of reality. What is wrong begins to seem acceptable. What is acceptable begins to seem excessive. And after some time, no one remembers where the change began. Application. You do not need to believe a lie to be influenced by it. You only need to live with it long enough, because what is repeated continuously begins to seem normal. Code 6. Spiritual coldness. Matthew chapter 24, verse 12. There is a symptom that appears before great spiritual collapses. Coldness. People remain busy. They continue producing. They continue consuming. but they lose the ability to feel meaning. There has never been so much entertainment, so much information, so many distractions, and at the same time, such a deep sense of emptiness. Application. Not every emptiness is a lack of resources. Often, it is a lack of purpose, because a soul without direction desperately searches for anything that can fill the void. And those who lose their sense of meaning become vulnerable to any narrative that promises purpose for their existence. Code 7. The worship of man. 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 4. Here we find the final code, the core of every Antichrist spirit, the replacement of God with man. Whenever human beings begin to believe they are the highest authority, they assume roles they were never created to fulfill. The problem is not confidence. The problem is self-sufficiency. Because when man becomes his own reference point, there is no longer any authority capable of correcting his course. Application. When man occupies the place that belongs to God, he inevitably turns himself into an idol. The Antichrist does not arise in a vacuum. He arises in an environment prepared by patterns that have already been accepted. Perhaps the greatest mistake is to imagine that these signs belong only to the future, because patterns do not announce their arrival. They settle in silently. The invisible always comes before the visible. "7 minutes of wisdom, a lifetime of results." This was today's code. Ancient code. What has always been there, but almost no one noticed.